This homeless cat was taken in by firefighters, who discovered after a few months that she was a murderer. The firemen and emergency medical staff at the house where a little cat named Killer embraced them had no idea how much of an impact the cat would have on them and the neighborhood. They quickly discovered, though, that she was no cute and cuddly little cat. Rather, she was a murderer. Typically, when you picture a fire station with firemen and other emergency personnel, you see the station pet as a dog, like a Dalmatian. But she was no ordinary cat, and this is no ordinary story. Join us to learn more about Station 57's cat, Killer. Because of its location in a busy part of Brooklyn, New York, Station 57's emergency medical technicians are accustomed to seeing stray cats outside of the station. They didn't know until one day that a meow was coming from the station's entrance. These vagrants don't usually bother the EMS at the station and stick to themselves. But this was going to be a special day. Being a passionate animal lover, Nancy Gwillem, a Station 57 employee, was eager to track down the cat causing all the ruckus. She started by raiding the station refrigerator with 2 other EMSs in an attempt to find some food that might attract a cat. They headed out to find the guest, hot dogs in hand. They had to look everywhere for the cat since EMS stations are plenty of excellent hiding places. They searched for her for a long time before discovering her hidden behind an off-duty ambulance. She was a little, hungry and filthy cat. The humans fed her what they had brought, but the cat gave them a look and made sure they maintained their distance instead of being appreciative. Although she was glad to accept their meal, it did not mean that they had gained her confidence. Nancy claimed that this particular cat appeared to be much more terrified than the other stray cats she encountered. All of them are on high alert and cautious around strangers, but the cat that would subsequently be named Killer was much more terrified than that. She jumped at the sound of a car because they were in a busy neighborhood. Nancy and her 2 co-workers became concerned that she might not be your typical stray since she became alarmed even by the sounds of a typical metropolis. It's possible that she was abandoned there, with someone hoping that they would eventually locate the cat and take care of her. She made it there, however she did. The team was thrilled to have her trust, but their primary purpose was to carry out their assigned tasks. Sooner or later, someone would want their support. They had to force themselves to look past their little guest, put on their gear, and start saving lives. Killer was gone by the time the radios stopped talking, and they managed to return to the station. Nancy kept food and water available for a few days in case she returned, but she was nowhere to be seen. Then one day, while getting ready for a call, some first responders saw something. There they discovered Killer had reappeared and had taken up residence beneath the gear rack's red cables. Not that Nancy and most of her pals had anything against her adopting Station 57, but there was nothing they could do about it. Killer felt secure beneath the gear rack for the moment, but ultimately they would take over the entire facility. The staff at the station took care to provide her lots of goodies. While some were sent away with a hiss and a swipe of the claw, others were embraced with some grace. She was not going to become domesticated anytime soon, even if she was ready to eat what they served her. To even notice that she remained, they had to look under the wire grid. The cat was certain that they needed to maintain their distance from one another in spite of their best attempts to become buddies. She gave them a sneer if they peered behind the grid and would swipe at them if they tried to pet her, since she was upset about being bothered. It was charming to the station's cat enthusiasts. They understood that this was only a young cat, terrified and facing some difficult obstacles. Some, nonetheless, failed to comprehend that the cat may be hostile toward each and every one of them, despite the fact that they were feeding her and making an effort to show her affection, even if it was obviously unwelcome at the moment. Even the question of whether she would be permitted to stay was up for discussion. As first responders, they frequently dealt with irate members of the public who were irritated by things like roadways being closed during an emergency, worried family members who took it out on them, or unexpectedly hostile patients. People who were against the cat said they didn't need another live creature that was only looking to swat them. However, as Nancy and the other cat enthusiasts pointed out, they would never have discovered Killer's existence if they hadn't looked for her. Besides, nobody was really brave enough to eject her. They simply hoped she would stop disliking them so much and start being a little more loving. To entice the cat to play with them, Everyone began bringing in toys and snacks, but Killer only laughed at these presents, as if a street-smart tiny cat could ever be won over with a few balls and toys with catnip. She did, however, gradually begin to come out of her shell a little bit more. She would be observed walking about the firehouse, not quite as terrified of everyone she encountered, but at least not as much as before. Nancy came to the conclusion that she wanted to find a means to tell others around her after hearing a lot of false information and from people who just didn't see why Killer was doing the way she was. To help everyone get to know Killer a little bit better, she created an Instagram page, and it was successful. People who had previously been adamantly opposed to owning a station cat came to see that they were providing a safe haven for an anxious animal. Those who thought she was overly cruel realized that it was a coping strategy she had to acquire after learning how to take care of herself on the streets. Everyone began to lose their attitude. Gradually, Killer began to pay attention to the humans and some of the toys they were presenting to her. They even spotted her occasionally playing with a little ball that had been left lying around, until she discovered them, of course. She then made sure to turn her back and go in the end. Even the most vocal opponents of having a station cat were discovered to be in possession of toys and cat snacks in their lockers. There was a distinction made by the small cat. Some people began to see the beauty in an animal that wasn't as cuddly as a dog and had their own personality, those who made it very plain that they weren't cat people. Things were evolving. One of these co-workers opted to adopt a cat for the first time after a call went awry, leaving the cat as an orphan. The EMS staff was unable to get over their heartbreak and let animal control remove the cat, even though they had already found it a home. This coming from someone who wasn't even interested in having a cat at work. But when Killer began to earn her keep, that's when they all realized the discussion was officially gone. It wasn't until Killer began dumping the rat carcasses in high-foot traffic areas that they learned the extent of the station's rodent infestation. The station captain had been impartial up until that point, offering more delectable food in exchange, but at that point, he made it plain the cat was staying. "That cat works harder than some of the paid employees," he stated. Because she was a merciless murderer who could support herself, Murderer stayed, but with time, Killer softened and lost his fear. She would never be a lap cat that craved lots of cuddling, but she did develop into a content cat who was eager to play with toys, sometimes even with the people who offered them to her. The public became enamored with the stunning animal through her Instagram feed. She found a secure and contented home to call her own, and her co-workers all adored her. Would you let a murderous feline live with you? We appreciate you watching this video today.